Hello, everybody.
Today, we dive into a case that still haunts a small town in Nebraska. The unsolved murder of Pamela Jane. Now, before we get into the details, let me say this. This story has a lot of twists, a lot of unanswered questions, and more than a few red flags. And even though it's been over 2 decades, no one has ever been brought to justice. So stick with me until the end, because I want to hear your thoughts on what really happened. Pamela Jane Kramer was born in December of 1954 in Lincoln, Nebraska. By all accounts, she was the kind of person people loved being around. Warm, energetic, and completely devoted to her family and students. She worked as a first-grade teacher at Meadowlark Elementary in the tiny town of Mead, about half an hour north of Lincoln. She had been teaching there for more than 20 years, and people said she wasn't just a teacher. She was that one teacher kids remembered for the rest of their lives. You know, the one who made school feel exciting, who cared about every single student, who stayed after class to help if you were struggling. Outside of work, Pamela was deeply rooted in her community. She was active in her church, volunteered at the food bank, and was heavily involved in the PTA. Neighbors described her as the type of person who would drop everything to help someone else. At home, Pamela lived with her husband, Dennis, who worked in insurance, and their 2 teenage kids, Jason and Amy. On the surface, it looked like a picture-perfect family, but, as we'll learn later, things weren't quite as perfect as they appeared. September 5th, 2002. What started as a normal day in Mead would soon become one of the darkest in the town's history. That morning, Pamela got ready like usual and drove off, just like she always did. But when she didn't show up at school, it set off alarm bells. At first, her coworkers assumed she might be sick. It wasn't completely unusual for her to call out every once in a while. One colleague tried calling her home phone, no answer at first. Then Dennis picked up. He casually told them Pamela wasn't feeling well, that she'd stayed home sick. That explanation seemed fine. Until later that day, when her car was still spotted sitting in the school parking lot. That detail made people uneasy. By the next morning, when Pamela still hadn't shown up or called in, everyone was worried. More phone calls, but this time, nothing. Straight to voicemail! Finally, the school principal contacted police. When officers arrived at Pamela's home, something immediately felt off. Through the front window, they spotted her briefcase sitting on the kitchen table. Friends later confirmed that Pamela never brought her briefcase home. They knocked, no answer, so they entered. And what they found was shocking. Pamela was lying on the floor in a pool of blood. Her glasses had been knocked crooked. Her lips were covered in blood, and she had obvious trauma to her head and upper body. Here's the heartbreaking part. Pamela was still breathing when they found her. She was rushed to the hospital. But sadly, she died later from her injuries. Now, here's where things get strange. The crime scene didn't add up. The bedroom had been ransacked. Jewelry was missing. Her wedding ring, her class ring, and a few other pieces. This made police initially think it was a burglary gone wrong. Maybe Pamela had surprised the thief, and in a panic, they attacked her. But here's the catch. Her purse was still sitting on the counter. Expensive electronics were untouched, so why take only her rings? That felt personal. Even stranger, there wasn't blood anywhere else in the house. If Pamela had been beaten with an object, you'd expect spatter, signs of a struggle. But there was nothing. It looked like she had been attacked in one spot, and only in that spot. Some investigators even speculated she might have been beaten with hands or feet. But again, no trace of a weapon was ever found. To add another layer of weirdness, a neighbor reported seeing a white van cruising slowly through the neighborhood that evening. Suspicious? Sure. But when police canvassed the area, no one else remembered seeing it. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered cracks in Pamela's seemingly perfect life. It turned out Pamela had recently filed for divorce. Her marriage with Dennis wasn't as happy as it looked from the outside. In fact, she had even taken time off teaching to go back to school, planning to become a nurse and start fresh. And there was more. Pamela had started a relationship with another man, Charles. The problem? Charles was married. His wife, Cheryl, knew about the affair, and Pamela had even introduced Charles to friends. So now, investigators had to ask, was this a burglary gone wrong? Or was it something much more personal? Naturally, Dennis and Charles were the first two people questioned, but both had airtight alibis. Dennis claimed he was in Omaha visiting his sick father. Records backed that up. Charles said he was in Lincoln shopping for supplies, and he had receipts to prove it. So, while they both had motives on paper, jealousy, money, divorce, police couldn't link either man directly to the crime. Weeks turned into months, and months into years. No new evidence surfaced. Tips dried up. Eventually, the case went cold. Pamela's family never stopped fighting. They put up billboards along the highway, hoping someone would come forward. But to this day, no one has. Now, here's where I want to slow down and just talk through how bizarre this whole thing is. First, the burglary angle. If this really was just a random burglar, why only take a few sentimental rings? Why leave the purse, the electronics, and other valuables? That feels targeted. Second, the crime scene. No blood anywhere else. No weapon. That's extremely unusual. It's almost like someone staged the scene or cleaned up very carefully. Third, the affair and the divorce. It's hard to ignore that Pamela was making big changes in her life. Divorce papers! A new relationship? Plans for a new career? That is often a dangerous time when people around you may feel like they're losing control. And finally, the white van. Was it just a coincidence? Or was it connected? We may never know. At the end of the day, Pamela's murder remains one of Nebraska's most chilling unsolved cases. A woman who devoted her life to teaching children, helping her community, and raising her family was brutally taken. And her killer has never been caught. So now I want to turn it over to you. What do you think happened to Pamela Jane? Was this a robbery gone wrong? Or was it something far more personal? And do you believe this case will ever be solved? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you found this case as fascinating and frustrating as I did, give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into true crime stories that deserve to be heard. Thanks so much for watching.